We're going to be checking out this article called ADHD Made Me Impulse Buy and Get Into Debt. Now I want to warn others. So I thought this would be a pretty interesting article to kind of like talk about because a lot of people have really bad spending habits regardless of how much money they make. Like you could have someone who's like literally making only like $25,000 take home, living paycheck to paycheck, and you could have someone making $200,000 a year take home, living paycheck to paycheck, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, if Frankie Clark had a bad day or was feeling low, she would spend money. Sometimes it could be treating her friends to a nice dinner. Other times, she'd head online to grab the latest bit of tech. To Frankie, splashing her cash was simply an impulsion to lift her mood or boost her self esteem, albeit temporarily. It was also a habit that left her thousands of pounds in debt, because I believe she lives in the UK. Like, here's the thing that people need to understand: you always gotta look for the long term, right? Like if something's gonna just make you happy today and only today, that's gonna be a really depressing habit to take on. Because if you have to do that every single day for the rest of your life to try to get that fix, you're gonna have to keep on doing it more and more and more and more. Like you're never gonna be content. So be very careful with that. So, however, 5 months ago, Frankie was diagnosed with the neurological condition ADHD, and it changed everything. ADHD affects my spending in so many ways, some that I wasn't aware of before, explains the 27-year-old. I've quickly learned about how it contributes to disorganization, not knowing what my monthly income is, not being able to predict income. It can all lead to making decisions on spending that may put me in a tricky position and affect my cash flow. Living in Morpeth, Northumberland, and working as a PT, I'm guessing personal trainer, Frankie reveals how her condition got into the habit of buying things on credit, such as a new phone, clothes, makeup, even coffee, all in a bid to make herself feel better. And here's the thing: I understand how some of this can actually happen to people in terms of like spending money, because this can also happen to someone in terms of like eating too much food or eating bad food, right? You start eating to make yourself feel better, right? You start spending money to make yourself feel better. You start looking at adult films because it makes you feel better, right? But the problem is, with every single one of those things, you end up doing it, and then very soon afterwards, you basically get this crash where you're like, oh no, I feel like crap now, right? So again, be very careful. Be very aware of these habits that you're forming. So looking back, she now knows having the neurological disorder contributed to her bad money habits, which landed her more than 2,000 euros in debt, and wants to warn others of how this condition can affect everyday decisions. And say, look, 2,000 euros in debt is what, like I think about like $3,000, $4,000 or whatever, which isn't like a crazy amount of debt. But if she did nothing to confront this, to confront this habit, this 2,000 euro in debt could easily turn into like 10,000 euros, 20,000 euros, 50,000 euros, maybe even 100,000 euros. Like, I've seen people that had like a $60,000 credit card bill, and it's purely on consumption items, meaning nothing they bought was something that they could resell. So, like food, going out, coffee, coffee, services, all that kind of stuff, right? Traveling, like things that they could not get like anything back for. So ADHD basically affects the release of dopamine in the brain. So people wish with it try to find this dopamine in other ways. Frankie explains. The best way to explain it is that addictive feeling when you're on TikTok. That's what it feels like for someone with ADHD to get dopamine. Dopamine is released when you complete something, but for people with my condition who struggle with their attention span and disorganization, it's very rare that we get this release of dopamine. The only other way for us to get it through like behaviors, so spending, TikTok, and more. ADHD is typically diagnosed later on in life in women, as it can present differently to how it shows up in boys, and therefore the signs are ignored or put down as bad behavior. Frankie is evidence of this, having only found it in her late 20s. She says, I have struggled my entire life with so many of the ADHD symptoms, but it wasn't until my friend suggested it to me in November 2020 I connected the dots. I was referred on to the NHS and was told it would be 12 weeks, and during the pandemic, this wait time increased every month by 3 months. So in March 2022, after a successful month of work, I invested all of my profits to see a private psychiatrist, which I knew would help me in my business long term. The fact that it took her like 2 years basically to be able to get a diagnosis is insane. To see someone to actually check her out is insane. So it was a couple of days after my appointment. I was diagnosed with severe combined attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And previous to Frankie's diagnosis, she spent money quite impulsively for that dopamine release. Now I have an awareness of these behaviors, so I can put more thought into it and protect myself, she adds. I was in around 2,000 euros worth of debt, which I was paying off each month, Frankie remembers. I signed up on 14.5% APR interest, which means I was paying an extra 300 euros. So really, I was in 2,300 euros worth of debt. I also had a student loan, student overdraft, student credit card, and still had my car to pay off. The cost of living crisis hasn't made her dealings with money any easier. It's been incredibly challenging saving for a home, admits Frankie. I don't live with family or friends, have high rent, bills are going up, and I don't have a partner to split this with. At one point, I wasn't even breaking even with work after all the living cost increases. Add my compulsive spending on top of that, I was left with less than nothing each month, having to use Klarna or PayPal credit to purchase things that I need for work, which of course then you pay interest on. Like that is such a scary situation to be in. Like just reading that, it's like you have to be so careful with your spending habits. You gotta be so careful with your personal finance because it could go down really badly for you, right? Like here's the thing, you could be making minimum wage, but if you have your spending to the T, like you know exactly where all of your money is going, you know exactly what things are going to be costing, you know exactly what's coming in, when it's coming in, you know exactly when your bills are needing to be paid, and you got a small emergency fund, even making minimum wage, you would feel way more safe than probably what she felt. Like it's just crazy. So impulsive spending still does something, still does sometimes get the best of her, Frankie admits, but says she is much better at managing it now. Talking about how she got to grips with her debt, she explains first, someone taught me to do a balance transfer on my credit card. This transferred the balance from my credit card to a new credit card provider said they paid the original one off for me, and then I was given 12 months 0% APR to pay them back, which meant I was paying no interest on the new credit. Then I set up automated payments for my clients, so I was never waiting on money and I knew exactly what day to expect money to come in. Now, once any funds come in, the first thing Frankie does is pay off her credit card to avoid the trappings of interest. With what's left, she puts money into an ISA and uses Nude, a savings app, to get organized and work towards her goal of raising enough for a house deposit. Which, by the way, Nude sounds kind of like a funny name for an app for finance. Longer term, however, Frankie knows she needs to do deeper work to overcome this spending habit. I regularly see a psychotherapist and am trying medication to help me understand my behaviors and make better choices, she explains. We also talk through emotions as I may be trying to subsequently deal with them through my actions, such as spending to make myself feel better. Since then, Frankie says her life has dramatically changed in just half a year since her diagnosis. Suddenly, she has a clearer picture around why, at school, she struggled to focus and achieve high grades, and how being misunderstood caused other issues in her life, such as depression and an eating disorder. ADHD was at the root of it all. Presently, her mental health is in a good place as she makes sense of her experiences with an expert. I still struggle. I have good days and bad days, but on the whole, I would say there's about a 40% improvement in my quality of life since knowing I have ADHD, says Frankie. I've been living with this my entire life and struggled extensively, and this diagnosis in March has brought me so much clarity and understanding of myself. It removed the feeling of being a failure. So, I think this is a pretty good article in the terms of like you really need to understand yourself to a certain extent as to why you're doing some things that you're doing, right? Because once you understand it, then you could work on it, right? Like if you don't know why you keep reaching for dessert every single day, right? And you're getting fatter and fatter, but you don't know the reason why you keep doing that, even though you know what you need to do, it's going to be hard to actually beat that habit, right? If you don't know why you keep having a massive credit card bill, right, even though you know that you need to spend less money, it's going to be hard for you to combat that, right? Like the biggest thing is that I see with a lot of people who are really bad with their finances is one, they have never even written down how much they actually spend in a week on average, right? Like, if you stumble upon this, just do this one thing. Get a piece of paper, don't change any of your habits, just write down exactly what you spent every day for a week. So anytime you spend money, just quickly write down on this piece of paper. Like, this was how much I spent on Monday, and this is what I bought. Tuesday, this is what I spent on money, and this is what I bought, right? So basically, if you were to go to get a coffee in the morning, okay, I got a Starbucks coffee, $8. Okay, I got like a McDonald's lunch, $15, right? Like you would write exactly what you spent the money on what day. And if you were to just to do that for like a week, you'd actually realize something like, whoa, wait a minute. I spent like a couple $100 this week on coffee. I spent a couple $100 a week on energy drinks. Like, what is going on here? Why am I doing this? Why am I spending so much money on this? Right? Do I really need to do this? And it just help you a lot with just managing your money and getting into a better financial place. If you want to learn how to get out of debt and master your money, go to 40inbox.com or go down below.